It is officially season 3 of the Leaders Lounge. I am, of course, your host, Dawn Marie Morris, and I am so excited to be back after a couple of months off at the end of the year. And we have got an exciting show to kick off 2025. Y'all, a few weeks ago, we had an election, not an election, an inauguration of President 47 for the United States, President Donald J. Trump, who was reelected after losing the last election. And it has been a whirlwind since he has gotten in office. Before we get started talking about the executive orders that he has issued, or really the implications of the executive orders that we have issued, I definitely have to still make you aware of our latest book, which is Unpacking Agape, the 7 Languages of Intentional Leadership. If you have not gotten that book, please make sure that you pick that up. It is available at, let's get that going, worldclasstraining.net/agape, worldclasstraining.net/agape. And of course, the Leaders Lounge is an outgrowth of my business, the World Class Training Institute, where we seek to maximize human capital through the delivery of leadership and professional development training programs. So, if you are interested, if your organization needs to maximize human capital through better productivity, through more collaboration, through less conflict, any of those things, make sure that you go to our website, worldclasstraining.net, and schedule time to meet with me so that I can get into your organizations. And then for individuals, we also have Speak Easy, which is our public speaking skills training. And we also have our dance fitness program, which is Dance It Off with Dawn, that is starting this summer. So, and it's about fifth season now. So make sure that you go check all of that out at worldclasstraining.net. All right, so let's get into it. On January 20th, 2025, the United States inaugurated Donald J. Trump for his second term as president. And he began his presidency by signing, as most presidents do, several executive orders. But some of those executive orders have, and maybe I haven't followed them in the past, honestly, perhaps I haven't really followed them, but it seems as though some of these have really gotten people a little off kilter. There was the birthright citizenship executive order that he signed that is now being challenged by Congress. There's the executive order on DEI for federal employees that is having some trickle down effects in the states. So, not I don't know if it's necessarily in terms of how they're operating, but yeah, it has actually, because now you look at it, and Target has pulled back their DEI initiatives. I believe Walmart has pulled back their DEI initiatives. And so, what was done federally is having some impacts in the states and how people are operating their businesses. And so, I wanted to take a look at executive orders and really understand, or help everybody understand, what these executive orders mean, and do they trump acts of Congress? Because when you think about some things that happen in the United States, it takes, as they say, acts of Congress to get things done. So, what does it mean to really have an executive order in effect, and how does that impact how we operate in the United States? So, to get us started, I had to first make sure that I pulled the definition of an executive order. So, in the United States, an executive order is a directive by the President of the United States that manages operations of the federal government. The legal or constitutional basis for executive orders has multiple sources. The first is Article 2 of the United States Constitution, and that gives presidents broad executive and enforcement authority to use their discretion to determine how to enforce the law or to otherwise manage the resources and staff of the federal government's executive branch. So I'll repeat that again, or just kind of summarize what I just read. So it gives the president broad authority and ability to use their discretion to determine how to enforce the law or to otherwise manage the resources of the federal government's executive branch, which is why you are seeing, if you're watching the news, a lot of the changes that, well, for instance, like the DEI change that happened, it affected the federal level first because that is the executive branch of the United States. And so the other one, the ability to make such orders, executive orders, is also based on expressed or implied acts of Congress that delegate to the president some degree of discretionary power. So there can be certain acts of Congress where the president has some discretionary power or delegated legislation. It says here the vast majority of executive orders are proposed by federal agencies before being issued by the president. So, and this is from Wikipedia where I'm getting this information, so you guys can, as they say, fact check that as well. So that is what an executive order is. It largely um, impacts the federal level of government. However, when you're talking about leadership, right, and this is the leaders' lounge, what is done at the top has implications at other levels of the country. And that is why, as leaders, we have to be mindful of the atmosphere that we set because there are other people who are watching and they are getting their guidance from what happens at the top, right? So while President Trump has not told Target or President Trump has not told Walmart how to operate, they have gotten their um, they have implicitly determined that what was done at the top needs to be done in their organizations as well. So now, the other question that has come to mind is this one. How do executive orders compare to congressional legislation? Which means that when you're thinking about acts of Congress where the votes happen and they have to pass the House of Representatives and then they have to pass the Senate, how does that compare to what happens when an executive order is implemented? Well, the answer to that question is this. So, and I'm going to put this up big so everybody can see it. A law passed by Congress carries greater weight than an executive order because it represents the collective will of the legislative branch and applies universally across the nation. So once signed into law, it must be adhered to by all with penalties for non-compliance. So a law that is passed by Congress ultimately carries greater weight than an executive order because it represents the collective will of the legislative branch, which includes your House of Representatives and it includes the U.S. Senate. So when you're thinking about, hey, how do all of these executive orders, and in the last, they said since January 20th, President Trump has signed 20 executive orders. How does this affect us in the United States? Well, it definitely affects the climate of the United States, right? But in terms of the longevity of an executive order, still orders that are passed by Congress carry more weight. Now, the thing is this, however, with an executive order, unless it is overturned by the next president, then that order can stay in place. So, just like you see, oftentimes a president will come in and something that happened, something that, for instance, Joe Biden signed into law by his executive order was immediately overturned by Trump. I don't have any data on what that actually was, but I believe there were some. The same thing can happen when the next president gets into place. So it is impactful. However, unlike Congress, an executive order can be more easily overturned by the next president who comes into effect or comes into office, I should say. So that's the major difference. So executive orders are impactful. They are most impactful at the federal level, but they can have implications as we are seeing in the states. So, what does that mean for us as we are leading ourselves and leading others? Well, number one, we need to be mindful of what the president is putting into place. As those of us who live here in the United States, we want to be aware of what's going on because what happens at the top, as I said earlier, does have implications at the state and the local levels. So pay attention to what's going on. Make sure that you stay, you don't have to keep your eye always on it or your ear always on it, but be aware because if you see changes happening or if you see different decisions taking place, you want to know the basis of those decisions. The other thing is, though I'll say, as leaders in organizations, if your team members are asking you questions about how you might be impacted or how they might be impacted by the executive orders as they are coming forward, you want to be aware of what's going on so that you can answer questions in the right way. Now, there have been some people who are a little more anxious than others. And the other thing I will say is um, it's not necessary, I would say, to become anxious. It's just necessary for everyone to be aware. And I will say that since President Trump has enacted so many executive orders so rapidly, and again, perhaps I wasn't paying attention, but it seems like this stuff is happening very quickly, which made me think, how come with some other presidents, it seems like it takes forever to make change happen, right? But it seems like he comes in and he's able to do it right away. Well, this is why, because a president does have the authority to make some discretionary changes that affect the um, first the federal level, but they do have to also be based on constitutional and historical practice. I'm not sure if I said that yet. So you do have to be aware of that. So, for instance, the birthright citizenship um, executive order that President Trump signed has now been challenged by the Supreme Court and is on hold. So, um, as things happen and as they're reviewed, they can be challenged by Congress or they can be challenged by the Supreme Court. So, these things are important to keep in mind as well. So, that hopefully helps people who may not know understand more about executive orders and whether or not they do actually trump Congress. They don't trump Congress, but they do allow the executive level of the United States, which in this case is the president, to circumvent Congress and get some initiatives taken care of that may have been on that person's agenda. So that is the main thing. And they do stay into effect unless the executive order is overturned by another executive order or unless it's challenged successfully by the Supreme Court or by Congress. Or, last thing is when another president comes into office and overturns that executive order. All right. So, quick history lesson. Quick history lesson. So, keep your eyes to the ground, as they say. I think that's what the saying is. Make sure that you stay aware of what is happening. And then understand, though, when you're thinking about the comparison of an executive order, and I'm going to put this up again so everybody is aware, an executive order to congressional legislation, the way they compare is this: a law passed by Congress carries greater weight than an executive order because it represents the collective will of the legislative branch and applies universally across the nation. Once signed into law, it must be adhered to by all with penalties for noncompliance. So the law that's passed by Congress applies universally across the nation, where executive orders are impact the federal level of government, because that is the considered part of the executive branch. All right, so that's a little history lesson to start us off at the Leaders Lounge, as we had our highest leader in the land just take office a couple of weeks ago. We're back, we are rolling. You can check us out every Sunday here at the Leaders Lounge. If you have not subscribed, please make sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can be notified every time a new episode drops. And remember, we got 3 things going on right now. You can always pick up our latest book, Unpacking Agape, The 7 Languages of Intentional Leadership, at worldclasstraining.net/agape. You can go to our website and check out all of our leadership and professional development training programs for organizations, and then go and schedule time to meet with me. If you have personal development needs, specifically as it relates to public speaking, you can go to our worldclasstraining.net/personal and check out our Speak Easy one-on-one coaching for public speaking skills. And then we have Dance It Off with Dawn starting in April 1st, and you can register for that one as well. So all of that's right there on the website. So and last but certainly not least, I want everybody to again remember that as we have a new leader in office, we definitely want to stay aware of all of the changes that happen with our new leader. The leader sets the vision, and I write about that in Unpacking Agape, the relentless visionary. So understand that President Trump has a vision for how he wants the United States to run. Some of the pieces that he has as a part of his vision are easier to enact than others. We will see over the next 4 years some of his other initiatives as they attempt to be rolled out, and we want to make sure that we stay aware of everything so that we are, they say, knowledge is king. Knowledge is king, right? So hopefully I helped increase your someone's knowledge today who didn't know that much about how executive orders worked, because at the World Class Training Institute, our mission again is to maximize human capital, and we do that through the delivery of leadership and professional development training. So until next time, always remember that when you are better, we are absolutely better. Take care. See you next time.